January 10, 2010, Kamal Patel and Tushar Tumar are sitting in their office in Gujarat staring at a difficult choice. They have just invested 135 crores in building India's most advanced peanut processing unit. They have machinery imported from Switzerland. They have an 11-step quality control process that no other Indian exporters has. Their peanuts are aflatoxin free, premium quality, ready to ship to Europe. But there is one problem. Nobody in Europe wants to buy from them. EU buyers are laughing at their prices. Some are saying, do you think I'll pay you this much for Indian peanut? Others are offering prices so low that Kamal and Tushar would make a loss on every shipment. And now, sitting in front of them is an offer from Royal Exporters, one of India's biggest peanut exporters. The offer is simple: sell your peanuts under our brand, give us complete control of your production, and we'll pay you fairly. But there is a catch. If they accept this deal, they'll never build their own brand. They will become a contract manufacturer and nobody. Little do they know that just 6 years later, in 2016, Mars, the company that makes Snickers, the world's best-selling candy bar and my wife's favorite candy bar, will choose them as their exclusive supplier for peanuts in India and the Middle East. But right now, in this moment, they have to make a choice. But what would happen to their rupees 135 crore investment? It would just be machines working for someone else's name. The question is, when the entire European Union is on the verge of banning Indian peanuts, when buyers are refusing to trust a new Indian exporter, and when competitors are investing just 2 crores while you've invested 135 crores, do you give up your dream and accept the contract? Or do you dig deeper and fight for your brand? This is a research note on Khedut Feeds and Foods. The story of two cousins who saw an opportunity in a crisis. The story of how one chance encounter on a highway changed everything. And most importantly, the story of a decision that would lead them to supply peanuts to Snicker bars eaten by millions of people around the world. And for me personally, it was cool. When I met the founders last week at our Current Stars of Ahmedabad event, when they told me that literally all the Snicker bars that I've eaten ever in my life, the peanuts were supplied by them, it's quite a surprising and a wow moment in me. And the most exciting part was the company is based in Gujarat and they were supplying peanuts to literally the entire world. And this story begins not in India but in Auckland, New Zealand. In 2003, a young man from Gujarat arrived in New Zealand to study business management. His name was Kamal Patel. And while most students were busy studying, Kamal was busy building business. In 2003, he launched eSound, New Zealand's first online music store. He sold iPods when most people did not even know what e-commerce was. He created a social media site where people could share their frustrations. The site had 20,000 members. In 2004, he opened an Indian restaurant in Auckland and ran it for 4 years. In 2008, Kamal moved to Sydney, Australia. And here is where it gets interesting. Due to a change in regulations, India temporarily banned wheat export. Indians living in Australia could not get the right flour to make bakri. Australian wheat was high quality, but it could not be used for bakri. So what did Kamal do? He imported 8 commercial chakki machines from India, manufactured wheat flour in Sydney, and sold it under his brand Apna Parivar. The business was a hit. But then his parents wanted him back in India. Kamal said, Gujarati families are mostly joint families who prefer to stay together. So I asked my parents if they would come to New Zealand. They of course said no. So I had to come back to India. In 9 years, Kamal had lived in New Zealand and Australia, traveled to 50 countries, held a New Zealand passport and built multiple businesses. He could establish rapport easily with Europeans. He could talk about rugby, cricket and various leagues. And this global exposure would soon become his biggest advantage. When Kamal returned to India in 2008, his father, Ghanshyam Patel, who was the chairperson of Agricultural Produce Market Committee in Mahua, Gujarat, encouraged him to pursue a career in agriculture. But Kamal was interested in exports. And after exploring several options, he discovered that Gujarat was a leading producer of peanuts in India. In fact, Gujarat, AP, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and Karnataka together accounted for 75% of India's total peanut production. Kamal thought, this is it. I can export peanuts to Europe. But there was one massive problem. The year is 2008 and the European Union is about to ban Indian peanuts. You know why? Because of aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is a toxin that is produced by a fungus that thrives in moist environments that causes liver disease and cancer. The EU's regulations were strict. The acceptable level of aflatoxin in peanuts for human consumption was just 4 parts per billion. And for bird food, It was 15 parts per billion. But Indian peanuts, they were crossing these limits again and again. In 2009, EU issued 45 warnings about aflatoxin in Indian peanuts. Peanut shipments from India to the EU fell by 94% in the first 5 months of 2009. The Agricultural and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority, APEDA, held an awareness briefing in Rajkot, Gujarat. Sanjay Shah, the chairperson of Indian Oilseeds and Produce Export Promotion Council, said, if we do not meet EU standards, we should be prepared to face a ban, and other importing nations may follow suit. This was a crisis, a national crisis for Indian peanut exporters. And most exporters said, forget Europe. Let's sell to Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, African countries, and China. They have less stringent quality standards. But Kamal saw this crisis differently. He said, you can offer competitive prices, but the region has stringent quality standards. If we can solve that aflatoxin problem, we can capture the European market. The question over here was, why were Indian peanuts contaminated with aflatoxin? Kamal went back to the drawing board, started studying the entire peanut processing chain, and he discovered something shocking. Before decortication, the processors soak peanuts by sprinkling a large amount of water on the shells. Because the shells are porous, water would seep through. And here is a clever part. A cracked peanut has lower value, but if you add water to a cracked peanut, it remains intact and is less likely to break during decortication. So processors were adding water to increase the weight and size of peanuts. The permissible moist content in peanuts was 7%, but the actual moisture content was much higher because the moisture was absorbed inside, and this moisture created the perfect environment for that bad fungus to grow. Kamal said, even though the label indicates 7% moisture, the actual amount is far higher. The existence of moisture shortened the peanuts' lifespan to 3 months or even less. As peanuts contain more moisture, even smaller peanuts will have greater total weight. As a result, they receive more money for lesser quality peanut. These processing level malpractices defame the country of origin. Some producers even add stones and stick to adulterate the commodities to get money in the short run. Since it's a commodity business, the profit margin is very small, between 2% and 5%. The sellers engage in adulteration practices to increase the profit margin. So the problem was clear. Indian peanuts were an inferior. Indian farmers were producing, in fact, great peanuts. The problem was at the processing level. And Kamal thought, if I can solve this processing problem, I can export premium Indian peanuts to Europe at premium prices. But here is a challenge. How do you eliminate aflatoxin contaminated peanuts? Traditionally, this was done manually. 50 to 60 people would sit and handpick bad peanuts from the entire lot. But the problem with this approach was you could only eliminate what you could see. You couldn't see the fungus growing inside a peanut. So Kamal and his cousin Tushar Kumar, who had studied chemical engineering and understood agriculture, started doing research. They spoke with the exporters of peanuts and other agricultural products to find out how they maintain quality. They explored whether methods used in agricultural products could be applied to peanuts. Unfortunately, they did not find any ready-to-use solutions. And just when Kamal and Tushar were about to shift focus away from EU markets, something miraculous happened. Tushar was driving on his way to Rajkot when he spotted a car with a flat tire on the side of the road. He stopped to help. The man in the car was an executive from Bühler, a large machinery manufacturer headquartered in Switzerland. The executive was in town to demonstrate a machine for sesame products. During their conversation, Tushar learned that the machine helped sesame producers eliminate poor quality seeds using multiple parameters like shape, color, weight and other traits. Excited, Tushar asked, do you have a similar machine for peanuts? After consulting with headquarters, the Bühler executive said yes. The Bühler had an equipment that could be customized for peanuts. This was a breakthrough moment. Kamal and Tushar immediately organized a meeting with Bühler executives in Rotterdam, Netherlands. And they were thrilled to discover that the machine could be tailored to sort peanuts based on multiple quality parameters. The machine could identify aflatoxin contaminated peanuts by weight, color and identification level. It could even analyze the peanut's internal structure to detect diseased peanuts that appeared healthy from the outside. Kamal said, this is it. This is how we'll beat the competition. But there was one problem. The cost. The typical investment for a peanut processing unit in India was just rupees 20 lakhs. But Kamal and Tushar's investment, rupees 135 crores. That is 67 times more than the competitors. Half of the machinery was specifically adapted to process peanuts. The other half was used as to process other commodities. Kamal created an 11-step core proposition process. The entire unit was fully automated. Elevators transported peanuts from one machine to the next, from shelling to packing. The shelling process generated dust, so the shelling unit was designed separately from the central processing unit to prevent contamination. Kamal said, we call it the 11-step core proposition process. That is our differentiation. What the machine does is sort weight-wise, color-wise, shape-wise, and all other impurities are removed in the process. Kamal said, we can provide customers with highest quality aflatoxin-free peanuts with Indian flavor and texture. Kamal and Tushar named their company Khedut Feeds and Food Private Limited. Khedut means farmer in Gujarati. They wanted to honor the farmers who were producing these peanuts. Before beginning operations, a team from APEDA visited the unit. Export units intending to ship to the EU had to register with APEDA. Under APEDA regulations, Kamal was allowed to export 45,000 metric tons of peanuts annually. The processing unit was ready, the peanuts were ready, everything was perfect. Now, all they needed were buyers. In 2009, Kamal traveled to Cologne, Germany to participate in Anuga Food Tech, one of Europe's largest trade fairs for the food and beverage industry. He was excited, quite obviously, because he had the best product. He had the best process, he had premium quality, aflatoxin-free Indian peanut. But the response he received was underwhelming. The news of aflatoxin Indian peanuts had spread across the EU, and nobody wanted to take a chance on Indian exporters. Kamal still remembers an incident where a Dutch buyer kept him waiting for 30 to 40 minutes after learning he was an Indian exporter. Another incident shook him. A Polish buyer at the fair laughed at his proposed pricing and said, "Do you think I'll pay you this much for Indian peanuts?" Kamal is upset. EU buyers were purchasing peanuts from Argentina and the USA at the prices ranging from USD 2,200 to USD 2,600 per ton. Indian peanuts cost approximately USD 1,150 per ton. Despite the price advantage of almost 50%, finding buyers in the EU was difficult. A few buyers showed interest, but only at prices less than $1,000. Some buyers expressed interest in trying the product, but they wanted to buy at the prices equal to what other Indian exporters were offering to developing markets like Indonesia and Malaysia. Kamal said the biggest issue was that although some buyers in Europe were interested in buying from us, they wanted to pay the price that the other Indian exporters offered. Other Indian exporters had offered prices much lower than ours. As a result, we were under immense pressure to supply at lower price. Despite having products ready for export, for 15 days, Kamal searched in vain for buyers who would offer the right price. And this is when he questioned everything. He thought, what is the point of investing rupees 135 crores if I have to sell at the same price as exporters who just invested rupees 2 crores? Why did I create an 11-step process if buyers didn't value quality? The fundamental question was, do I continue the effort of excellence or just join the bandwagon? Faced with difficulties, Kamal contacted Girish, a peanut exporter who owned Royal Exporters Private Limited, REPL. Girish had worked in peanut export industry for more than 10 years and was one of the top exporters worldwide. Kamal had met him at the Cologne fair and they had exchanged cards. During their call, Girish asked Kamal to send some sample peanuts. A week later, Girish contacted Kamal to request a meeting in Mumbai. At a restaurant in Mumbai, Girish made Kamal an offer, $1,100 per metric ton. This was more than Kamal's break-even price of $1,050 per ton. In comparison, exports to developing countries were offering $950 to $1,050 per ton. But the deal came with conditions, of course. Kamal had to sell his products under the REPL brand. He had to agree to an exclusive contract for at least 5 years. And Girish wanted to visit Kamal's processing unit to complete the deal. Kamal realized something. His processing unit was unique. If Girish was a major competitor, closely observing the unit could immediately replicate the process. This would eliminate Khedut brand even if before it was created. Moreover, the EU sanctions on Indian peanuts were looming. Kamal wondered whether it was even appropriate to start a peanut business at this time. Perplexed and unsure, Kamal sought advice from his uncle. His uncle shared an anecdote. He said, if you look for water, you start digging. After excavating 10 to 20 feet, if you learn that there is no water, you stop digging at that place and you move to a new location. Once again, if you come back empty, you need to again go to another location and dig beyond 100 feet and you will eventually reach water. After listening to his uncle, Kamal called Tushar. They sat together contemplating the next steps. And this brings us to this critical decision. Should Kamal and Tushar accept REPL's offer or should they continue building their own brand? Let's look at both the options. If they accept REPL's offer, here are the advantages. Number one, assured ROI. They will get $1,100 per ton, what is above their break-even. Number two, access to REPL's production capabilities and distribution network. Number three, protection from downstream risks associated with customer acquisition and market development. But here are the disadvantages. Number one, potential loss of decision-making autonomy. REPL will have complete oversight of production and quality control. Number two, to me, this is the biggest drawback, which is missing an opportunity to build and establish their own brand. The Khedut name will never be known in Europe. And number three, loss of potential to achieve increased recognition in international markets. They will always be seen as a contract manufacturer and not as a brand. The question is, what would you do if you were in Kamal's shoes? Would you accept the safe option and become a contract manufacturer? Would you take the risk and continue building your own brand?
Hello everyone, My name is Kamal Patel from Khedut Feeds and Foods Private Limited. We are growers, processors and exporters of finest quality Indian peanuts. When we decided to focus entirely on Europe for our exports, the existing prevailing notions were against the idea. A lot of people believe this cannot be done with the quality that is being produced in India. But our belief said otherwise. So one thing that we realized when we are going through the lowest phase in our business is that failure, what you consider failure, is not often the opposite of success. It's just something that you need to go through while you're going on your journey towards the success. And I would say you need to fail once to realize that there's nothing easy in life. You need to fail to learn.
After days of deliberation, Kamal and Tushar made their decision. They said no to REPL. They decided to bet on themselves. They decided to dig 100 feet deep, just like Kamal's uncle had said. And you know what happened? They struggled for months. They faced rejection after rejection. EU buyers were still hesitant. The aflatoxin stigma was still strong. But slowly things started to change. Some buyers in Europe who valued quality started taking samples. They tested Khedut's peanuts and they were impressed. The aflatoxin levels were below EU standards. The quality was exceptional. The flavor was outstanding. And word started spreading in European market. There is a new Indian exporter and their peanuts are different. By 2012, the year when Hurun was also established in India, Khedut had established itself as a reliable supplier to premium buyers in Europe. But the real breakthrough came in 2015. Mars, the company that makes Snickers, was looking to source high quality peanuts from India. Snickers is the world's best-selling candy bar, and peanuts are the most critical ingredient in Snickers. Mars had been importing peanuts from Argentina and USA, but they wanted to establish local sourcing in India. In 2016, Mars officially began production of Snickers in Pune, India, and they needed a provider or a supplier who could provide premium aflatoxin-free peanuts at scale. And guess who they chose? Khedut Feeds and Foods. Mars worked closely with Khedut to establish local sourcing from Saurashtra region of Gujarat. In 2018, Mars launched a 3-year value chain development program for peanuts in India, working with over 3,000 smallholder farmers in Saurashtra. The program focused on good agricultural practices, quality screening, post-harvest handling and sustainable sourcing. And Khedut became a key partner in the program. In December 2025, the Khedut founders were one of the entrepreneurs from Gujarat who were felicitated by Hurun India for their outstanding contribution to the Gujarat's economy. Khedut Feed and Foods process over 100 metric tons of peanuts per day. They export to over 60 countries. They work with over 8,000 farmers across Saurashtra and Rajasthan. And most importantly, they supply peanuts to Mars for Snickers production, not just in India, but for Middle East and European markets. The 135 crore investment that seemed crazy in 2009, it turned out to be the best decision Kamal and Tushar ever made. The 11-step process that nobody valued in 2010, it became their biggest competitive advantage. The rejection they faced from the European buyers in 2010, it forced them to build stronger relationships and prove their quality consistently. This brings us to the business lessons from this research note. Lesson number 1, crisis creates opportunity, but only for those who can see beyond the obvious. In this case, when the EU was about to ban Indian peanuts, most exporters shifted to developing markets. But Kamal saw the crisis as an opportunity to capture the European market by solving the aflatoxin problem. So always remember, when everyone is running away from a crisis, look for the opportunity hidden with it and show up every single day. Lesson number 2, innovation requires massive investment and not all investments pay off immediately. In this case, Kamal and Tushar invested 135 crores when competitors were investing just 2 crores. This was a huge risk, but without this investment, they would never have been able to solve the aflatoxin problem. So if you believe in your innovation, be prepared to invest heavily and wait patiently for return. And finally, lesson number 3. Sometimes the hardest decisions are about identity, not money. In this case, the question wasn't about profit margins or break-even prices. The question was, do we want to be a contract manufacturer or a brand? Do we want to be known or unknown? Do we want short-term security or long-term potential? Kamal and Tushar chose identity over security. They chose long-term brand building over short-term profits. And that decision is what made Mars chose them as their supplier for Snickers. If they had become a contract manufacturers for REPL, Mars would never have known the Khedut name. But because they built their own brand, they became the partner of choice for the world's biggest candy company. And these questions have no easy answer because the answer depends on your vision, your risk appetite and your belief in your own capabilities. And this, my friends, it's very common across almost all the successful entrepreneurs that I've seen in the country. They have never chased money. They've never really chased fame in the first instance. They focused on their vision. They turned up every single day and they worked extremely hard. And the brand building, the money and the fame, just followed. Money was never the first objective. But this is in fact the incredible story of Khedut Feed and Foods. I've just started, but this is one of my favorite research notes so far about an Indian entrepreneur, which is about Khedut Feeds and Foods. The story of two cousins who invested 135 crores when everyone said it was crazy. The story of how they said no to a safe contract and bet on their own brand. Story of one highway encounter led to a Swiss machine that changed everything. And most importantly, the story of how patience, persistence, and uncompromising quality eventually led them to supply peanuts to Mars for Snickers, the world's best-selling candy bars. From being laughed at by Polish buyers in 2010 to becoming Mars's only supplier by 2016, Kamal and Tushar proved that when you dig 100 feet deep, you eventually find water. Their bet paid off. Their 11-step process became the gold standard. And their decision to say no to REPL, it was a decision that built an empire. And I just hope you learned something valuable from this research note. That's all from my side for today. See you in the next research note.